Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine August 1st, 2025,
Right.
just hours after the July jobs report dropped, and that report showed weaker than expected payroll gains
Mm-hmm.
and a pretty significant downward revision for May and June. I mean, we're talking about 258,000 jobs.
Yeah, that's roughly the size of, what, Richmond, Virginia, just gone from the record.
Exactly. Vanished. And immediately after this, President Trump made this, well, striking move.
Yeah.
He dismissed the Bureau of Labor Statistics Commissioner, Erica McIntyre.
And accused her of rigging the numbers. No evidence provided, just the accusation.
Right. It was very sudden.
Extremely rapid. And Deputy Commissioner William J. Wojciechowski, he was elevated to acting commissioner almost instantly.
And that whole sequence, for a lot of people, it really raised one huge question.
Can we still trust the numbers? Can U.S. economic data still be trusted?
Precisely. And that's our mission today. We're doing a deep dive here, getting into the factual situation, separating the headlines from the statistical reality.
Trying to cut through the noise.
Yeah, our goal is to give you a shortcut to being genuinely well-informed on what's frankly a critical issue.
And I think, what's really fascinating here is understanding the BLS itself, its foundational role.
What exactly does it do?
Well, it's the main fact-finding agency for the really critical U.S. economic data. Think labor, inflation, productivity, wages, all the big ones.
Okay.
And it's designed intentionally with several layers of, let's call them fortifications.
Fortifications to keep it independent.
Exactly. Specifically to ensure its independence.
So how does that work in practice? How does the BLS actually make sure its data is nonpartisan and trustworthy? Is it just, something they say, or are there real mechanisms?
No, it's a great question, and it's really about the structure, the actual data collection, the statistical methods. That's all handled by nonpartisan career civil servants.
So not political appointees.
No, these are professional statisticians, economists. Their job is crunching numbers, not playing politics. The commissioner, or even an acting commissioner like Wojciechowski now, they can't just unilaterally change the raw survey results.
They can't just walk in and say, make this number higher.
Absolutely not. Revisions have to follow very specific pre-established statistical procedures. It's not someone deciding to tweak a number. There's a strict public protocol for everything.
That sounds pretty solid, almost impenetrable even.
Yeah.
But is there any potential crack in that armor? Could these safeguards ever be sidestepped?
Right.
Or are they truly ironclad?
Well, those structural safeguards are definitely strong, incredibly strong. But you hit on a really important point. Our sources do acknowledge that leadership changes, well, even without directly altering data points. They can subtly influence things. The agency's tone, its priorities, how the public perceives it.
Perception again.
Right. And that impacts public trust, even if the math is still correct.
Which brings us right back to William Wojciechowski's appointment. Now, on paper, this guy sounds highly qualified.
Oh, absolutely. Decades of experience. A long-serving BLS professional.
So why the controversy then? Why isn't this just seen as, okay, a capable person stepping up?
It's all about the context, not his personal qualifications. Those aren't really in dispute.
Right.
It's how he was appointed, right after a commissioner was fired in a very politically charged way.
Not for doing anything wrong, not for performance issues.
Exactly. Just because the numbers weren't what the administration wanted to hear, essentially. And Wojciechowski, as an acting head, hasn't been Senate confirmed.
So he doesn't have that same job security.
Right, which makes him potentially more vulnerable to political pressure. Whether that pressure is real or just perceived, the vulnerability is there.
And regardless of his own record, the symbolism is potent. Critics see his appointment as basically a direct result of political retaliation.
That perception starts to chip away, doesn't it? Even if the underlying statistical machinery is still humming along correctly.
Yeah. And that leads us to something really interesting our sources highlighted. The real risks here. They aren't just about this one firing.
Right. This is key.
What the research shows is that even before this whole political drama, the BLS was already facing some deep structural challenges.
Think of them like pre-existing conditions. They make the current situation feel even more precarious.
That's a fascinating angle. So what were these issues? What was the BLS already dealing with before this specific news broke?
Well, one major concern is declining response rates to their surveys.
People aren't answering.
Fewer are, yes. Take the employer survey, for instance. Participation dropped to roughly 58% in July 2025.
Okay, 58%. What was it before?
Just a decade ago, it was around 72%.
Wow, that's a significant drop.
It is, and it increases the statistical uncertainty. makes the estimates less precise.
And it's not just about people responding, is it? What about money, resources,
Yeah,
technology?
exactly. Budget shortfalls are another big piece of this. Funding cuts over time have meant smaller sample sizes for some surveys.
Which means less data to work with.
Right. And it forces the BLS to rely more heavily on what's called imputed data.
Imputed data, what's that?
Basically, it's filling in missing information using statistical models. Educated guesses, essentially.
Boy.
And our source points out that for the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, our main inflation measure, up to 19% of the calculations now rely on imputed data.
19%, that sounds high.
It's a significant portion, yes. And then there's the issue of outdated systems. They've been slower, perhaps, to adopt modern digital survey tools.
It affects efficiency.
Efficiency, timeliness, maybe even response rates, too.
Okay, so you've got these underlying systemic pressures building up. Declining responses, budget issues, tech lag, and then you layer this politically charged firing of McIntyre right on top. So even if there's zero evidence Wietrowski is actually messing with the data.
Right, and there isn't any evidence of that.
How does the perception that it could be politicized actually affect us, you, the listener? What are the real-world consequences of this erosion of trust?
Well, for you, the listener, the impact could be quite significant, actually. It risks chipping away at market confidence in these official statistics.
So investors might get nervous?
They might. It can also fuel public conspiracy theories. People start saying, oh, the numbers are fake, which makes it harder to have sensible economic policy debates.
Right.
And crucially, it could make international investors a bit wary of U.S. economic transparency. That could potentially affect investment flows, even the value of the dollar. So, yeah, big picture stuff.
Okay, so how have the key players reacted? What are the experts saying? The people whose jobs really depend on this data being reliable.
Well, interestingly, former BLS commissioners from both Republican and Democratic administrations have come out quite strongly.
What did they say?
They've condemned the firing. They're warning that this kind of move seriously undermines the agency's institutional credibility. It's a rare moment of bipartisan agreement on something this fundamental.
That's telling. And what about economists generally? What's their main worry?
Their big concern is that even just the perception of political manipulation could mess with critical policy decisions.
Like the Fed setting interest rates.
Exactly. If the Federal Reserve doesn't fully trust the inflation or jobs data, or if they think the public won't trust it, well, it makes their incredibly difficult job of managing the economy even harder.
But interestingly, you mentioned markets earlier. Financial markets seemed pretty stable initially, right after the news broke.
They did, largely. And part of that is because big market players, they have their own ways to track the economy. They use private sector data trackers like ADP payroll numbers, for example, to cross-check the official BLS figures.
So they have alternatives.
To some extent. But the warning from analysts is clear. If this erosion of credibility continues, you could start seeing risk premiums creep into U.S. assets. Markets might demand a higher return for the perceived uncertainty. It's kind of a wait-and-see situation for them right now.
Okay, so let's circle back to the big question we started with. Can the data still be trusted? How do we actually answer that for you, the listener?
I think we need to break it down. If we look at different criteria, we get a more nuanced picture.
Right. Criterion 1.
Methodological integrity. Is the underlying process sound? And the answer there is yes. It currently remains intact.
Because it's still the career staff doing the work using the established methods.
Precisely. The engine room is still functioning as designed.
Okay. But then, criterion 2, leadership independence. That's where it gets shaky.
That's where it's potentially weakened. You've got an acting head, no Senate confirmation yet, appointed under these politically charged circumstances. That creates vulnerability to pressure, real or perceived.
Right. What about transparency? Can we still see how the sausage is made?
Yes. Transparency seems maintained. The data revisions, the methodologies, it's all still publicly documented. Anyone can go online and look up how the numbers are produced and track any changes.
Okay, so methods intact, leadership independence potentially weakened, transparency maintained. What's the last piece?
Perception. And that one is clearly damaged.
No question there.
No. The firing, explicitly linked to standard data revisions. That has absolutely created doubt among the public, among analysts, in the markets. It's not about the numbers themselves changing yet, but how people feel about those numbers.
Which means we really need to know what to watch for going forward. What are the signals that things might be getting better or worse?
Good question. The first big indicator will be the permanent appointment. Who does President Trump nominate to be the permanent BLS commissioner?
What kind of background will they have? Professional statistician or political loyalist?
Exactly. That nomination will signal a lot about the degree of political influence the administration intends to exert or not exert.
What else should we keep an eye on?
Any subtle or not so subtle shifts in methodology, changes in how surveys are designed, when data is released, the rules around publication, any of those could be a sign.
And funding.
Yeah.
You mentioned budget issues earlier.
Absolutely critical. Watch the funding decisions coming out of Congress. Do they restore the BLS budgets? Allow them to improve sample sizes, upgrade their technology? That will tell us a lot about whether the institution is being strengthened or allowed to weaken further.
So congressional action matters here too.
Definitely. And one more thing. There could be calls for independent external audits.
Like having an outside group verify the labor or inflation data.
Yeah. If trust erodes significantly, that kind of external verification might be something people demand to help restore confidence.
Okay, so let's try to summarize the bottom line for right now. Where do things stand today?
The bottom line, as we see it now, is this. U.S. economic data coming out of the BLS. It's still statistically credible in terms of its process, its methodology. The basic mechanics are sound.
But there's a big but.
There is. However, the perception of its independence, its insulation from political pressure, that perception is under significant strain, all stemming from that politically motivated firing.
The core machinery is okay, but the trust in the driver is shaken.
That's a decent analogy. And this leaves us and you with a really critical thought to consider as we look ahead.
What's that?
If the next permanent commissioner, whoever that might be, is widely perceived as being chosen for political loyalty rather than deep professional expertise, well, the risk of actual data politicization, not just perceived risk, goes way up.
Meaning the numbers themselves could start to be influenced.
Potentially. And that trajectory could, over time, align the U.S. more closely with countries where official statistics are routinely compromised for political gain. That's a future I think we all need to be vigilant about preventing.